Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Order of Assassins, the real history of the medieval sect that gave the world a new word for murder. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. The word assassin comes from Arabic, from hashishin, a derogatory term applied by enemies of a medieval Islamic sect called the Nizari Ismailis to the operatives they sent to eliminate specific political targets. The etymology, whether the term referred to use of hashish or was simply a term of abuse meaning hashish eaters, is still debated by scholars. But the sect's activities were real and historically documented beyond any doubt. For approximately 200 years, from 1090 to 1275 CE, from their strongholds in the mountains of Persia and Syria, most famously the fortress of Alamut in the Alborz Mountains of northwestern Iran, the Nizari Ismaili leaders, called the Old Man of the Mountain by Crusader sources, sent trained operatives to kill political targets across the Middle East and occasionally into Europe. The operational doctrine was precise, not mass violence, but the targeted removal of specific individuals who threatened the sect's survival or interests. The precision was a source of both the sect's terror and its effectiveness. The Nizari Ismailis were a branch of Shia Islam who believed that a different line of imams than the one recognized by mainstream Shia Muslims held legitimate authority. Under their charismatic founder Hassan-i Sabbah, they captured the mountain fortress of Alamut in 1090 and began systematically acquiring a network of mountain fortresses across Persia. Their military position was defensively strong but offensively weak. They could not field armies capable of challenging the great powers of the era: the Seljuk Empire, the Crusader states, the Sunni Abbasid Caliphate. Instead, they developed a political instrument that compensated for military weakness: the threat of assassination so precise and so reliable that it could deter stronger powers from attacking them. The operations attributed to the assassins over their 2 centuries of activity are historically documented to a significant degree, though inflated by legend in Crusader accounts. Their victims included the Fatimid Caliph of Egypt's vizier, the Sultan of the Seljuk Empire, multiple Crusader leaders including Conrad of Montferrat, King of Jerusalem, and senior figures of the Sunni Abbasid establishment. The sect was finally destroyed by the Mongol invasion under Hulagu Khan in 1256, which systematically reduced each of their mountain fortresses. But the legacy, the word, the method, and the mystique of a disciplined organization capable of reaching any target anywhere has persisted for 750 years and continues to shape how we think about political violence. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we go further, if you are finding this investigation compelling, please take a moment right now to like this video, drop a comment below with your thoughts, and share it with someone who loves a good historical mystery. If you are watching on YouTube, hit subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss a new episode. If you found us through Facebook, tap follow on our page. It takes just a few seconds, and it genuinely helps us keep making these documentaries. Now, let us get back to the investigation. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the landscape of modern documented mysteries, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Governments keep secrets. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is documented fact, confirmed by declassified archives freedom of information disclosures, and the confessions of officials long after the events in question. The United States government ran secret programs to test psychedelic drugs on unwitting civilians cultra, to spy on its own citizens, COINTELPRO, and to cover up nuclear testing incidents that killed American soldiers. The British government suppressed information about UFO encounters by military personnel for decades. The Soviet Union systematically falsified scientific data to maintain ideological conformity. None of this means that every government secret involves supernatural phenomena or alien contact. The reality of classified programs is almost always more mundane. Military technology being tested covertly, intelligence operations that cannot be publicly acknowledged, or simply the bureaucratic instinct to classify first and justify later. Most UFO sightings that turn out to have official explanations were classified aircraft. Most government denials of anomalous phenomena are straightforwardly honest. The phenomena being denied are simply not real. But the documented history of government secrecy has a practical effect on investigative credibility. When officials deny knowledge of events that witnesses describe in compelling detail, that denial cannot be taken at face value without independent corroboration. The proven track record of institutional concealment means that institutional denial, however authoritative it sounds, is not the same as evidence of absence. This complicates every modern mystery that touches on official narrative. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Order of Assassins, the real history of the medieval sect that gave the world a new word for murder, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Hassan-i Sabbah, approximately 1050–1124 CE, the founder of the Nizari Ismaili state at Alamut, was a theologian and revolutionary who combined profound religious scholarship with extraordinary tactical intelligence. He captured the fortress of Alamut in the Alborz Mountains of northern Iran in 1090 through a bloodless infiltration rather than military assault. He and his followers converted the garrison to his version of Ismaili Islam and were welcomed into the fortress. Hassan spent the remainder of his life at Alamut, never leaving it after 1090, and organized the expansion of Nizari power through a combination of fortress acquisition, religious conversion, and targeted killing of enemies. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the fidei dedicated ones who carried out assassinations were the operational arm of the Nizari order. They were trained at the main assassin fortresses in theology, multiple languages to allow infiltration of diverse societies, physical skills, and patience. The classical account by Marco Polo that they were drugged with hashish and shown a paradise garden to motivate them is almost certainly apocryphal and is not found in contemporary Islamic sources. What is historically documented is that the fidei were genuinely devoted to their mission and accepted death as the likely outcome of their operations. Many assassinations were carried out in public places, mosques, throne rooms, to maximize the political impact and the fidei rarely escaped after a public killing. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. The assassin's most famous operation in the Crusader context was the killing of Conrad of Montferrat, King of Jerusalem, in April 1192, just days after he had been elected king. Conrad was killed in Tyre by two assassins who had spent months posing as Christian monks to gain access to the city. Contemporary Crusader accounts were uncertain who had ordered the killing. Suspicion fell on both Saladin and Richard I of England, and the assassin leadership initially claimed both as clients. The killing of Conrad, who was the most capable military opponent of Saladin at that moment, significantly altered the course of the Third Crusade. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the assassin fortress network at its peak included more than 70 fortresses scattered through the mountains of Persia, Iraq, and Syria. The most important were Alamut, destroyed 1,256, Maimundiz, destroyed 1,256, and the Syrian network centered on Masyaf, which survived longer under the leadership of Rashid al-Din Sinan, the old man of the mountain of Crusader sources, died 1,193. The Syrian branch of the assassins eventually reached accommodation with the Crusader states, the Mongols, and finally the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt, operating as a semi-autonomous entity until the Mamluks finally absorbed it in 1273. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the destruction of Alamut by the Mongols in 1256 involved the systematic elimination of the fortress's library and intellectual resources, as well as the physical destruction of the buildings. Hulagu Khan's forces reportedly burned the library at Alamut, which contemporary sources described as one of the great libraries of the Islamic world, containing works on astronomy, mathematics, philosophy, and theology. The Nizari Ismaili scholar Nasir al-Din al-Tusi, who was at Alamut when it fell, was allowed to surrender and was taken into Mongol service, eventually becoming one of the greatest astronomers of the medieval world and establishing the Maragha Observatory in 1259. What makes TH is particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. The modern Nizari Ismaili community, numbering approximately 10-15 million people globally, is led by Shah Karim al-Husseini, the 49th Imam, who is known by the honorific title Aga Khan Roman IV. The current community, which is concentrated in South Asia, Central Asia, East Africa, and Western countries, has no connection to the violent operations of the medieval Nizari state, and has been described by the current Aga Khan as a tragedy of historical circumstances that no longer reflects Ismaili values. The community is noted for its emphasis on education, philanthropy, and development work through the Aga Khan Development Network. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the order of assassins, the real history of the medieval sect that gave the world a new word for murder. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the rational actor theory, the mainstream interpretation of the assassin organization, holds that the targeted assassination strategy was a rational, calculated response to the Nizari Ismailis' specific geopolitical situation, a small, militarily weak, religious minority surrounded by vastly more powerful Sunni states that wished to destroy them. Assassination was a cost-effective deterrent. If any ruler who moved against the Nizaris could expect to be killed, the cost-benefit calculation of attacking them shifted dramatically. Under this theory, the assassins were not a terrorist organization in any contemporary sense, but a small state using the limited military tools available to it with extraordinary skill and discipline. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence. But it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the psychological warfare theory emphasizes the assassin's sophisticated manipulation of their opponent's psychology as much as their actual operations. The mystique of the assassins, the rumors of their hashish-induced paradise gardens, their superhuman dedication, their ability to penetrate any security, was itself a weapon, and one that the assassin leadership may have deliberately cultivated and amplified. Under this model, the assassins were as much information warriors as they were killers, and their effectiveness depended as much on what their enemies feared they could do as on what they actually did. Marco Polo's fantastical account, far from being a fiction, may represent the assassin propaganda that the leadership deliberately allowed to circulate. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the intelligence organization theory proposes that the assassins were essentially the world's first documented professional intelligence and covert operations organization, that their real importance was not the assassinations themselves, but the intelligence network of embedded agents across the Middle East that made the assassinations possible. Under this model, the fidei who carried out killings were the overt tip of a much larger iceberg of embedded agents, informants, and political contacts that gave the Nizari leadership extraordinary situational awareness of events across the region. This intelligence advantage, more than the assassinations themselves, is what made the small Nizari state a significant player in the politics of the medieval Middle East. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Order of Assassins, the real history of the medieval sect that gave the world a new word for murder, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes contemporary documentary evidence for assassin operations comes from both Islamic and Crusader sources, providing unusual cross-cultural corroboration. Ibn al-Athir, the great 12th-13th century Islamic historian, documented multiple assassin operations, including the killing of Nizam al-Mulk, the Seljuk vizier, killed 1092, and the first killing by Hassan-i Sabbah's order. William of Tyre and other Crusader chroniclers documented the killing of Conrad of Montferrat and other Crusader targets. The consistency of descriptions across independent sources, even when those sources disagree on details, establishes the historicity of the core operational pattern. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented the fortress of Alamut was partially excavated by Swiss archaeologist Rudolf Norman and Iranian archaeologist Ahmad Alizadeh in the 1950s-60s, and Iranian excavations have continued since. The physical evidence of the fortress confirms its extraordinary defensive position, accessible only by a single narrow path. Its extensive water cisterns, allowing long sieges, and its large-scale grain storage capacity. Library artifacts and manuscript fragments have been found in disturbed contexts, but the systematic destruction described in Mongol sources means that the intellectual heritage of Alamut's library is largely lost. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the survival of the Nizari Ismaili community as a living religious tradition, despite the destruction of their medieval state, provides indirect evidence for the organizational resilience and theological depth of the movement. The preservation of Ismaili theology, religious texts, and community practices through 7 centuries of often hostile political environments demonstrates that the Nizari Ismailis were not primarily a violent organization, but a religious community for whom the medieval Alamut period was an exceptional and violent chapter in a much longer spiritual history. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Order of Assassins, the real history of the medieval sect that gave the world a new word for murder. Now, we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing in our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The historical assassins continue to be a subject of significant scholarly attention, and the availability of primary sources, particularly the Arabic chronicles and the Persian Nizari histories that have been edited and translated in recent decades, has substantially improved the quality of historical understanding. Bernard Lewis's The Assassins, a radical sect in Islam, 1967, though dated in some interpretations, remains a key scholarly reference. More recent work by Farhad Daftari and Shafiq Virani has given much more nuanced pictures of Nizari Ismaili intellectual and religious life. The Assassins' cultural legacy extends far beyond historical scholarship. The word they gave to English and other European languages remains in daily use. Their operational model, small dedicated groups using targeted violence against specific individuals rather than mass military force, has been analyzed extensively by military theorists and appears to have influenced the development of modern special operations and counterterrorism doctrine. Their story has been adapted in numerous video games, most famously the Assassin's Creed franchise, which has approximately 200 million copies sold across all titles, making the medieval Nizari Ismailis one of the most widely recognized historical groups in contemporary popular culture, albeit in a heavily fictionalized form. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Order of Assassins, the real history of the medieval sect that gave the world a new word for murder from the historical record through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Order of Assassins ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process, and the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please help us reach more people. If you are watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new documentary. If you are watching on Facebook, tap the follow button on our page to stay connected. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.